Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The hospital corridor was a labyrinth of anticipation and uncertainty, where every corner seemed to hold a different story. I had been there countless times, weaving through the sea of white coats and the muted whispers of patients and their families. But today, the usual atmosphere of controlled chaos was disrupted by a scene that would be etched into my memory forever. The woman stood at the far end of the corridor, her face a mask of fury and despair. She was in her early 40s, though the lines etched on her face and the dark circles under her eyes hinted at a life that had aged her prematurely. Her chestnut hair, tied back in a haphazard bun, escaped in frizzy tendrils around her flushed face. She was shouting, her voice echoing off the sterile walls, making heads turn and feet shuffle uncomfortably. "You have no right," she screamed, her voice cracking. "How could you let this happen? Who do you think you are?" The object of her wrath was a tall, composed doctor, his presence a stark contrast to her frantic energy. His name tag read Dr. Thompson, and his calm demeanor spoke of years spent weathering the storms of human emotions. His eyes, a deep blue, held a quiet resolve as he faced her tirade. His hands, large and strong, with prominent veins running like rivers under his skin, remained at his sides, a picture of restrained patience. "Mrs. Harper," he began, his voice gentle yet firm, "please try to understand." "Understand," she interrupted, her voice rising to a near hysterical pitch. "Understand what? That my daughter, my baby, is making the worst mistake of her life, and you did nothing to stop it." Dr. Thompson took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "Your daughter is 18. Legally, she has the right to make her own decisions. She's an adult, Mrs. Harper, and she has chosen to marry him." I watched from a few feet away, my heart pounding. I was on my way to visit a friend recovering from surgery, but now I was rooted to the spot, unable to tear my eyes away from the unfolding drama. The air seemed to thicken with tension, and I found myself holding my breath. Mrs. Harper's face crumpled, and for a moment, she looked heartbreakingly vulnerable. "But she's sick," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She needs to focus on getting better, not on this." Dr. Thompson's expression softened, and he took a small step closer to her. "I understand your concern. I really do. But your daughter and her fiancé, they love each other. And in their situation, their love gives them strength. It gives them hope." "Hope?" Mrs. Harper scoffed bitterly, swiping at the tears on her cheeks. "What good is hope when she's facing this?" "Sometimes, hope is all we have," Dr. Thompson replied quietly, "and sometimes, it's enough." Their conversation paused, the silence between them heavy with unsaid words. I glanced around, noticing how other people in the corridor had subtly shifted away, giving the pair a semblance of privacy while still clearly eavesdropping. "How could you let them get married?" Mrs. Harper demanded again, though her voice had lost some of its fire, replaced by a weary sadness. "She's just a child. She should be thinking about her future, not this." Dr. Thompson sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly as he considered his next words. "Mrs. Harper, your daughter has been through so much. She deserves a chance to be happy, even if it's just for a little while. She and her fiancé, they've chosen to spend whatever time they have left together, as husband and wife. That's their right." Tears streamed down Mrs. Harper's face, and she looked away, her body shaking with silent sobs. I felt a lump form in my throat, a deep empathy for the pain she was experiencing, the love of a mother, clashing with the harsh realities of life and death. "I can't lose her," she whispered, more to herself than to Dr. Thompson. "Not now, not like this." The doctor reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know it's hard, but think of it this way. By supporting her choice, you're giving her the gift of happiness. Even if it's brief, it's real, and that's something no illness can take away." Mrs. Harper looked up at him, her eyes searching his for some semblance of comfort, of understanding. "But it hurts so much," she said, her voice barely audible. "I know," he replied softly. "It always does." At that moment, the heavy door at the end of the corridor creaked open, and a young woman stepped out. She was frail, her movements slow and deliberate, but her eyes were bright with determination. She wore a simple dress, her ash-colored wig styled neatly, and she leaned on a pair of crutches for support. "Mom," she called softly, her voice filled with a quiet strength that belied her fragile appearance. Mrs. Harper turned, her face lighting up with a mix of love and sorrow. "Sarah," she breathed, moving towards her daughter. The two women embraced, and I felt tears prick at my own eyes. Dr. Thompson stepped back, giving them space, his expression one of quiet respect. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Sarah said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "But this is what I want. What we both want." Mrs. Harper pulled back, cupping her daughter's face in her hands. "I just want you to be happy," she whispered, her voice breaking again. Sarah smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I am, Mom. I really am." As I watched this poignant scene unfold, I realized that I had just witnessed something extraordinary. A mother's love, a daughter's determination, and the unwavering support of a doctor who understood that sometimes the greatest act of healing is allowing people to live their truth, no matter how brief or bittersweet it might be. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a story that would touch my heart in ways I could never have imagined. And as I turned to leave, giving the family their privacy, I couldn't help but feel a profound respect for the strength and resilience of the human spirit. The courtyard outside the oncology ward had been transformed into a small oasis of celebration, a stark contrast to the clinical world inside. The bright sun filtered through the sparse leaves of the winter-bare trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The air was crisp, the chill tempered by the warmth of love and hope that seemed to radiate from the gathering. I arrived early, unsure of my place among the few guests. The bride's mother, Mrs. Harper, had initially resisted the wedding with every fiber of her being, but it was clear that love had prevailed. Now, she stood off to the side, her eyes red from tears, but her posture proud and supportive. She wore a simple dress, her hair elegantly styled, as if trying to bring some semblance of normalcy to the extraordinary circumstances. The makeshift altar was adorned with white flowers, their delicate petals a symbol of purity and fragility. A modest table nearby held a large cake, its creamy surface decorated with intricate designs, flanked by bowls of fresh fruits and cheeses. It was a humble spread, yet it carried a profound significance, an affirmation of life and love amidst the shadow of death. The guests, a small but heartfelt group, chatted softly among themselves, their faces a mix of joy and sorrow. The bride's grandmother, a stoic woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun, stood with a lone friend of the bride, their expressions a mirror of resilient support. The groom's parents were nearby, their eyes glistening with unshed tears as they whispered to each other. As I took my place among the guests, a hush fell over the courtyard. The door to the hospital opened slowly, and the bride emerged. Sarah, in her simple yet elegant white dress, seemed almost otherworldly. Her pale skin contrasted with the ash-colored wig that framed her delicate features. She moved with painstaking slowness, leaning heavily on her crutches, but her eyes were bright, reflecting an inner strength that defied her frail appearance. The groom, David, stepped forward to meet her. In his light gray suit, he looked both dignified and vulnerable. His empty sleeve, a stark reminder of the battles he had fought, hung at his side, but his face lit up with a radiant smile as he took in the sight of his bride. He was tall and thin, his complexion pale, but his spirit seemed unbreakable. As they approached the altar, the officiant, a kind-looking older man with a gentle smile, began the ceremony. His voice was calm and reassuring, carrying a sense of solemnity and joy. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Sarah Harper and David Miller. Their love is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a beacon of hope in challenging times. David turned to Sarah, his eyes full of adoration. "Sarah, you are my light, my strength, and my hope. Today, I promise to cherish every moment with you, to hold you close, and to love you with all my heart, for as long as we both shall live." Sarah's eyes shimmered with tears as she replied, "David, you are my rock, my joy, and my love. I promise to stand by you, to cherish our time together, and to love you unconditionally, every day that we are given." The guests, including myself, were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with tears. The simplicity of their vows, spoken with such heartfelt sincerity, resonated deeply with everyone present. There was a profound beauty in their words, a reminder of the power of love to transcend even the most daunting of challenges. Rings were exchanged, golden bands that glinted in the sunlight as they slid onto trembling fingers. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the courtyard erupted in applause. David and Sarah kissed, a gentle and tender embrace that spoke volumes about their love and commitment. As the newlyweds turned to face their guests, the atmosphere shifted from solemnity to celebration. The guests gathered around the couple, offering congratulations and words of encouragement. There were tears, but also laughter, a testament to the complex emotions that filled the day. I found myself standing next to Mrs. Harper, who watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and heartache. "She looks so happy," I said softly. Mrs. Harper nodded, her eyes never leaving Sarah. "She is, and that's all that matters." David's parents approached us, their expressions kind and sympathetic. "Thank you for being here," David's mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "It means so much to all of us." "We wouldn't miss it for the world," Mrs. Harper replied, managing a small smile. As the afternoon sun began to wane, we gathered around the table to share in the modest feast. The cake was cut, its sweet richness a stark contrast to the bittersweetness of the occasion. Glasses of champagne were raised, and toasts were made, each one a celebration of love, resilience, and the preciousness of life. David and Sarah mingled with their guests, their smiles never wavering despite the underlying sadness that lingered in the air. They laughed and chatted, their joy infectious. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated happiness, a respite from the harsh realities they faced. As the day turned to dusk, the white limousine pulled up, its silly doll and festive streamers adding a whimsical touch to the solemnity of the occasion. David helped Sarah into the car, their movements slow and deliberate. They waved to us from the backseat, their hands intertwined, as the limousine drove away, the sound of the honking horn a cheerful farewell. I stood there, watching the car disappear into the distance, a lump in my throat. This wedding, held in the shadow of an oncology ward, was more than just a ceremony. It was a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. David and Sarah had chosen to seize their moment of happiness, however fleeting it might be, and in doing so, they had reminded all of us of the importance of living fully, even in the face of uncertainty. Winter had wrapped the city in a cold, unforgiving embrace, a stark contrast to the warmth of Sarah and David's wedding just a few months before. The courtyard, once a lively space filled with joy and love, now lay silent under a blanket of snow. As I made my way to the small cemetery near the hospital, the weight of grief pressed down on me, each step heavier than the last. It had been 4 months since Sarah's death, and only 3 days since David had followed her. The news of their passing had spread like wildfire through the hospital, touching everyone who had been a part of their extraordinary journey. I approached the cemetery, the bouquet of white lilies. I carried a small, fragile tribute to a love that had burned so brightly yet so briefly. The cemetery was a quiet, solemn place, its silence only broken by the whispering wind. Snow covered the ground, blanketing the graves in a serene white. As I walked among the headstones, I saw a familiar figure standing before two graves marked with simple stones. It was Mrs. Miller, David's mother. Her face was etched with sorrow, her eyes red from endless tears. In her hand, she held two gold wedding bands, their shine dulled by the overcast sky. She turned as I approached, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of recognition and shared grief. "Hello," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," she replied, her voice trembling. "It's been so hard." We stood in silence, the weight of our emotions palpable. The graves before us were simple, marked by headstones that bore their names and the dates of their two short lives together. "They were so brave," Mrs. Miller said, her voice breaking. "They faced everything with such strength and love." I nodded, my throat tight with unshed tears. "They did, they really did." As we stood there, Dr. Thompson approached, his presence a steadying force in the storm of our grief. He looked solemn, his hands clasped in front of him. "Mrs. Miller," he said gently, "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, doctor," she replied, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't believe they're both gone. It feels so surreal." Dr. Thompson sighed deeply, the weight of his own sorrow evident. "I know. It's never easy to lose someone, especially not like this." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken thoughts. I could see the struggle in Dr. Thompson's eyes, the burden of his responsibility pressing down on him. He looked at the graves, his expression one of profound sorrow and contemplation. "I operated on Sarah for 4.5 hours, he said quietly, almost to himself. "And on David for 3. Their chances were less than 0.01%. I often wonder if it was worth it. Did I just prolong their suffering?" Mrs. Miller shook her head, her grip tightening on the wedding bands. "No, doctor. You gave them a chance. You gave them hope. And for a while, they were happy. Truly happy. That's worth everything." Dr. Thompson looked at her, his eyes searching for reassurance. "It's hard to see it that way sometimes," he admitted, "but hearing you say that, it helps. Thank you." "They deserved those moments," I added, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "They lived more fully in those few months than many do in a lifetime. Their love, it was extraordinary." Mrs. Miller smiled faintly, tears streaming down her cheeks like liquid diamonds. "Yes, it was. And it always will be." We stood together, bound by our shared loss in a way that words could not express. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of pine and the promise of more snow. I placed the bouquet of lilies on their graves, a small tribute to the love that had touched so many. As we turned to leave, Mrs. Miller paused, her gaze lingering on the two headstones. "I like to think that they're together now," she said softly, "that they found their peace." Dr. Thompson nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I hope so too. They deserved it." As we walked away, the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the cemetery. It was as if the world itself was offering a gentle farewell to two souls who had touched so many lives. Sarah and David's brief, beautiful love story had left an indelible mark on all who knew them. I knew that their story would stay with me forever, a reminder of the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit.